In 2014, the Supreme Court said that people with mental disabilities, dementia or brain injury may be deprived of their liberty by people caring for them, even if they had their best interests at heart. It didn't matter where they lived, a hospital, a care home, supported living, or even their own home. After this ruling, we discovered that hundreds of thousands of people in England and Wales were deprived of their liberty. Lots of people were surprised, as most were not living in large institutions or hospitals. We thought if you lived in the community or your own home, that meant you were free. The big question is, why did we start saying that these people were deprived of their liberty? To understand this, let's look at our history. About 250 years ago, people who were thought to be mad might be confined to a madhouse. Madhouses were often horrible places where people might be chained up, whipped, starved, or kept in cold, cramped or filthy conditions. In 1774, Parliament passed a law saying that madhouses could only accept patients if a doctor certified that they were a lunatic and they had to be licensed and inspected. The Victorians built a large network of asylums for people they called lunatics, which were supposed to offer better care than madhouses or workhouses. Many spent years inside these institutions and were cruelly treated. In the early 20th century, Britain built mental deficiency colonies to lock up people with learning disabilities away from society permanently. After the Second World War, people started thinking differently about mental health. People began to talk about care in the community. The big institutions, hospitals and workhouses gradually closed. People had new ideas about care in the community. People with learning disabilities should have normal lives, live in ordinary houses on ordinary streets. The big institutions were abandoned and consigned to history. The problem is, some care homes in the community are quite institutional. People may not have choices about where they live or who they live with. They may not have everyday choices like when to get up, what to eat, when to go to bed, or how to spend their time. Campaigners wanted people to live in real homes. They set up supported living services to help people live in their own house with support. But the problem was, some people were still being told what to do by care staff, even in their own homes. Sometimes supported living also looks like mini institutions. With every 2 steps forward, we took a step back into institutional living arrangements. Sometimes it's hard to say whether a place is a home or an institution. However, researchers and disabled people agree that it's really important for people to have big choices over where they live, who they live with, and how they are supported. Home is a place where we get to be who we are. Institutions are places that try to make us into somebody else. Lots of laws governed the old madhouses and asylums, including laws about deprivation of liberty. These were thought of as liberty safeguards. When we closed the big institutions, most of this law was ripped up. People were free. We didn't need liberty safeguards anymore. Some people thought that people with, say, dementia and intellectual disabilities did not really have any wishes about where they lived or how they lived, and so their liberty did not need protecting. The only law that was left was for people with mental illness who were objecting to being in hospital. This, though, was all about to change. In 1997, an autistic man called HL, who'd been living in the community for a few years, got very upset at his day centre. His GP sedated him and he was taken to Bournewood, the learning disability hospital where he'd grown up. HL's carers were not allowed to visit him or take him home. The doctors said it was in his best interests to be in hospital. They said that HL was not objecting because he did not try to escape, but HL did not communicate using words, even though he appeared very upset. He did not try to leave because he could not do so without help, and he was also sedated. Because HL's doctors did not use the law to keep HL in hospital, nobody independent checked whether it was the right thing for him. His carers couldn't ask for a tribunal, he had no liberty safeguards. HL's carers went to court to try to get him home. The British court said he was not detained because he'd not tried to leave. But the European Court of Human Rights said this was a fairy tale. They said the professionals had HL under continuous supervision and control, and he was not free to leave, so he was deprived of his liberty. They said that HL needed liberty safeguards to check that the professionals were making the right decisions in confining HL. After this case, the government changed the law. The Mental Capacity Act, deprivation of liberty safeguards, are supposed to stop people being unfairly deprived of their liberty in hospitals and care homes. They say you can only be deprived of your liberty if you lack mental capacity to decide where to live and if it's in your best interests. These liberty safeguards mean somebody independent has to check a person's situation, and they have access to advocacy, representation and a court appeal if they disagree with it. But back in court, nobody could agree what deprivation of liberty actually meant. Some judges said it was about not being with your family, others that it was about not being in big hospitals, another that it was whether your care was more restrictive than normal for people with similar conditions. But this meant lots of people lost liberty safeguards. The courts were not making any sense. Everyone was in a muddle. The Supreme Court was asked to decide what deprivation of liberty actually meant. Lady Hale at the Supreme Court said that deprivation of liberty had to mean the same thing for a disabled person as non-disabled person. She said that if she could be deprived of her liberty by some care arrangements, then a disabled person would be as well. She said that it didn't matter where you lived, a hospital or a care home or supported living or even a family home. A person could be deprived of their liberty anywhere. She said that if people caring for you were always supervising you and had control over you and you were not free to leave, then you were deprived of your liberty. She called this the acid test. Even if your care arrangements look very nice, they still might be a deprivation of liberty because you were still being supervised and controlled by carers. She compared this to a gilded cage. The court decision by Lady Hale meant hundreds of thousands of people were deprived of their liberty in care homes, supported living and even private homes. Local authorities were overwhelmed. They couldn't check that everybody's human rights were being protected. The law had to be changed. In the future, there's going to be a new law called the Liberty Protection Safeguards. But some people think this might not work very well, that it'll still be too easy to put people in places where they or their families do not want to be. We'll have to see how this new law works out. What do you think liberty means? Can a person be deprived of their liberty in their own home? Should we say a person is deprived of their liberty if they're happy with the care and where they're living? If a person's not happy where they are, what should the law do? And how do we know if people are really happy and not just dragged or scared, or the person they're talking to does not understand them? Perhaps our real goal should be to enable and support people to live in real homes where they can be who they want to be, make big and small important decisions about their lives, no matter what their age is and whether they're disabled.